Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another video. Today's video is going to be the offlane tier list for patch 7.32d, and as always, I get my information, my statistics from like the trends tab here, Dota buff, a lot from Dota 2 Pro Tracker, and then also from the Pro Meta, the recent DPC games in the qualifier that just happened. So that's how I get all of my information, and then I kind of mash it together with my own opinions a little bit there, and I try to make a pub tier list for you. Not necessarily for the highest MMR, just kind of in general. So without further ado, let's just jump into it. And if you like these videos, obviously like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. That is really helpful, and I really appreciate it. So first, we're going to talk about and start off with the S tier heroes. So the first one is Razor. So you may have seen Razor in the mid and the carry tier list, but he was a little bit further down because really this hero has just become an offlaner. That's just kind of how this hero has evolved over the past year or so. Honestly, ATF was one of the big reasons for that. Obviously, he was playing this a lot like a year ago. I think they won a major with him playing this and Timbersaw and stuff. And then it was nerfed a little bit, and it kind of saw not that much play in TI. But people didn't realize, I think that actually it would have seen play in TI if they realized that you could do this, and that was the Bloodstone build. People realized that you can actually build Bloodstone on the hero, and then you just don't die. So it's the same thing as Leshrac, basically. I mean, it's kind of what Bloodstone does, but basically it's the same thing as Leshrac, where Leshrac's putting out a ton of magic damage, spell damage, and then you're just healing off of all that damage. And that's kind of the same thing with Razor. You pop your ult, you pop the static link, you have a shard, you have your Q, and you're just doing so much damage with all of your spells that you just are healing through everything. So it's like almost like a BKB replacement, but you can have Bloodstone, you can have BKB, and you just do an insane amount. You can also get tanky with, like a Shivas and other stuff like that. So it's basically just another way to make the hero have a really good early game timing other than just BKB, which is pretty helpful because this hero kind of just rushed BKB and then went like Refresher or went, another like armor item or something. But now you have this other buildup, which is pretty interesting and pretty cool. Plus you also have that extra mana where this hero didn't necessarily have mana problems in the sense that you're like a super spell intensive hero for farming and stuff like that, but it was kind of annoying that you did not really have much of a farming kit other than spamming Q, and then you didn't have much mana and you weren't buying many mana items. But now with the Bloodstone, obviously that fixes a good portion of that, especially because you can go mana boots in the beginning of the game. So that kind of like fixes the early game part of this hero not having any mana and all this kind of stuff. It just is a way better build up for the hero, and it obviously is super OP. If you ever played against it, you know what I'm talking about, where this hero just pops all the spells and the hero can't die. It's kind of ridiculous. And that's really why Razor is here, why Razor is S tier, because it's ridiculous. It does all the same things it always did, dominates in lane pretty easily. Obviously is very anti-carry in the sense that you can just zap all the carries damage, and if you get on top of these range carries, which are pretty fast and you usually can do, it can be very hard for them to get away from you, and now you're just healing through everything and you're doing insane damage. So all those same things, but now you have a better build, and it's very, very good. And then actually next for the S tier, I put Legion here. So if you notice, as we hear both of them talk, the Razor and the Legion Commander voice lines, but as you probably noticed in the A tier, if you looked ahead, there's a lot of heroes there. And I was kind of debating. I mean, Razor's clearly like insane right now. People are just kind of like realizing that this Bloodstone build is broken. And there were some other heroes, that were good, but like there was a Lycan has a very good win rate and is a very high win rate, but I don't think this hero is picked a lot in pubs. It's like relatively underpicked just in general, low MMRs, but even in high MMRs, it's not super popular. And that's just because it's kind of a very unique play style. It just has very good strengths, but sometimes it can be taken advantage of and not the, the strongest, where like a Beastmaster is more of has a stun and some other utility that Lycan doesn't have. So anyway, the reason why I'm saying that is because I'm like, I don't know, who should I put to S? Is Razor the only S hero? And I was kind of going through it, thinking about what I was going to do, and I saw the statistics, and I just feel like Legion is the other S tier offlaner, because really, if you look at all the other offlaners, a lot of them are good in higher MMRs, but maybe not as good if you don't play them, or at lower MMRs because they rely on team coordination, stuff like that. And Legion also is up there with all of them. And I'm seeing a lot more Legions. Like I think Legion is picked or banned in like every single game that I play. I think this hero is just so good right now, basically because the buff to Blade Mail just makes you almost guaranteed duels with this hero. I mean, the build is the same. You're still going Blink. You're going Blade Mail. You're doing a lot of right-click damage. You're, locking one guy down. But I think this hero's always actually been pretty strong in pubs because it's like the anti-split push hero. You pick people off, you can do insane damage. But I just see this hero winning way more duels, scaling way more into the late game. And even if you're tanky, you think you're tanky, you think like you have a lot of HP, you think you're not going to die in the duel. I swear you just die in the duel now. Like you just pop blade mail, you just duel somebody and they just die every time. Like it's just regardless. I just don't even care. Like you don't even need much and they just die. They just kill you. Especially if it's like a carry that does a lot of damage. Like this blade mail is so good now. It just makes this hero ridiculous. So I still think you have similar weaknesses that you always had before, but like if you're not snowballing the game, if you're not getting these duels, it can be hard, but I think it's a lot more reliable to do that now. And you still have a save, you still have a strong laning stage, you still do all the same things you did before. I think it's just these blade mail buyers, these kind of blink initiation heroes like this, I think are very, very good. So that's Legion. And that's honestly the main reason. Its win rate is high, its pick rate is super high. Like I think it's really good. And then because this is more of a pub tier list, not just solely focused on the high MMRs, I'm going to put Legion at S tier. And I think it definitely deserves it. I think if you're good at Legion, you know how to play it, and you can like you play offlane, you can pick that in your offlane games, your OQ games, and you can honestly stomp games because you're basically playing carry from the offlane, but you at least provide like a stun, you provide a save, you provide a lot of these other things as well. So that's Legion. I decided to put Legion up there. Let me know if you agree or disagree with that. Next, we have the A tier. So these are all just basically solid offlaners. We have Death Prophet, pretty solid offlaner right now. I don't see a lot of it, but it's just kind of been on the upswing. I think this hero is like one of these kind of broken-ish heroes where it just feels so hard to deal with this Siphon. I know it's been nerfed here and there a little bit, but I think basically the reason why Death Prophet is here, I've said this in other videos, is because a lot of the other stuff got nerfed. So Wraith Pact and all these other things got nerfed, and I think that just kind of elevated Death Prophet back up to being a good offlaner, where I think it always was pretty good. I just think the weakness of it is obviously the long cooldown ultimate. That's the same kind of thing as it always has been, but I think it's a pretty good offlaner right now, and the statistics bear that out. Next two, we have Lycan Beastmaster. I just kind of name them together in the same vein because these heroes have been good for a long time. Basically, ever since they introduced Helm of the Overlord, these heroes have been relevant because they pretty much are the same hero. Now, obviously, there are differences. Lycan is more of like run at the squishy supports. If you don't have stuns, they can deal with him. And even if you do, he just runs past you and just like, melts you down. And then the Beastmaster is more of like a little bit slower of a hero in the sense, but he has this where this guy kind of runs at you super fast. Beastmaster is just kind of more methodical, kind of wear you down, slow you, and then stun you through BKB, wear away your towers. And Lycan does the same thing. It's just like there's a little more fast tempo, there's a little more methodical, a little more utility in there as well, where he's more damage. But they do generally the same thing. They buy Helm of the Overlord. I think because Wraith Pact isn't as good now, Helm of the Overlord is still good. And so these guys buy it. So like, the Visages, the maybe Tide, and some of these other like Enigma, because those heroes buying Wraith Pact they were all nerfed a little bit. Now these heroes are just like even better than they were, even though they were still pretty relevant. So they're A tier. You can even say like at the higher Mars, if you know how to play them, they're S tier, but I'm putting them A tier just because of that. I mean, it's good. They're just not like, I just don't think they're completely broken. They're just kind of what they've always been. Doom, just a pretty good hero right now with the Ags. The fact that you can just get so much money, like you can just buy Midas, you can have your Devourer, you can buy Octarine, have a pretty low cooldown Doom, and just like you Infernal Blade people 1,000 times during the Doom. You have this AoE Doom that people just can't get, they can't run away from. I think that's the main thing that's made the hero good, is that it's kind of done the same thing it's always done. It's just that now people are buying Ags, which is kind of broken, and then people are buying Octarine Core, which just give you quicker Dooms and more Infernal Blades, I believe. You just kind of have it like every second or so, you just have a new like mini stun, which is kind of insane doing damage. And so that's honestly the main thing that makes Doom broken. But otherwise he does kind of the same stuff. It's just the same hero as it's been for a long time. Pangolier, a decent offlaner. I think this hero is just overall a really good hero, really good team fighter. He can have weaknesses. He has his weaknesses in the offlane. There are matchups that you don't do well against, but if you can survive the lane and you don't just get stomped in it, you will pretty much transition into the later portion of the game really well all the time. One thing I haven't mentioned too much with even in the last video is that obviously since Naga is so good, heroes like Zeus, heroes like Pangolier that can clear through the wave or clear through the illusions are really good. Also, they can clear waves pretty quickly too, because Naga always pushes everything in. So heroes like this are also very valuable in general against heroes like Naga if they're getting picked. But then if Naga's not getting picked in your bracket, it's kind of like, Is Pangolier really that great because there's no Naga? That kind of stuff. So it is kind of like a give or take depending on what's getting picked in your bracket. Next we have Bounty Hunter. So Bounty Hunter, I don't know. I like the hero. Don't get me wrong. I've played a good amount of the hero. It just feels awkward to me, and I still am not sold on the hero. Like, I want the hero to be good in some ways. I'm just not sold on it. But hey, the win rate bears it out. I mean, the win rate and the pick rate is pretty high, so it seems pretty good. People are playing it in the offlane with some success in high MMRs, and so that is happening. I mean, the build is not bad. Like, if you do get your Ags, you can do a lot of damage. You can be super annoying. I just think there are big weaknesses with the hero. Like, if you can't get your farm early, if you can't team fight, if you can't get these track kills, if you can't harass the enemy safe lane by just like clicking them and stuff, if you can't do what you want to in the game, whether that's because your laning partner is bad or the enemy like combo is very strong, if you just can't get off to a good start and do what you want, it can feel really bad because this hero has like no ability to flash farm other than just like harassing and clicking people. So basically, if you can't do that, you're just screwed. But if you can manage to do that, if you can click the enemy carry, if you can be annoying, if you can win your lane, I think this hero can just dominate games. I think that's the big thing with Bounty. It's just, I'm not sold that you can actually do that a lot of the time. Now, maybe in higher MMRs you can because people are more coordinated and the 4 positions don't suck all that much, but I don't know. That's just my feeling with Bounty. Magnus is, I guess, pretty good right now. I haven't seen a ton of it. I don't really know that there's any real reason that Magnus should be A tier other than, I mean, it's the statistics bear that out. It is a pretty good hero right now. I mean, apparently it's having some success. I don't think it's doing anything crazy. I think it's just RP is really good. I think the Horn Toss is also pretty good, not as broken as it was 2 TIs ago, but it's just kind of decent. And, getting your farm, buffing up your carry, I think with the Empower is just always going to be pretty good. Even though a lot of the range carries don't benefit as much, from the cleave or whatever, they still deal way more damage with that Empower. So it's just overall this hero is pretty good. And that's the thing. I think late game with this hero, especially like with the RP, with the Horn Toss, you can just never count out a team with Magnus on it. It's almost similar to Bounty in a way of like you can survive the lane and not just get crushed and not just be really sad after the first 10, 15, 20 minutes. Like this hero can just win you the game. Next we have Darkseer. So I am a notorious, the #1 Darkseer hater. You might know that about me. So you might be like, hey, why is Darkseer not an S tier? And I'm like, this hero is trash. And that's why it is not an S tier. Because even though this hero has like one of the highest win rates on Dota 2 Pro Tracker and is picked a good amount, and people really like the hero, I don't. And I think it's bad. And I think the only way it works is if you are playing high MMRs and people understand what the hero does, and you're also good at other heroes and you understand how Dota works. I think the only people that pick this hero below like 6k MMR are people that don't want to play Dota and they just want to iron shell the wave and then walk away. So basically this hero is just like a way to not play Dota while still acting like you're playing Dota because you don't actually have to learn how to lane. You don't have to learn how to do anything. All you really do is you iron shell the wave in the laning stage and then just pray that you get CS and then you just kind of iron shell the wave later in the game and push the wave and then you just like kind of iron shell and farm. And, maybe you get a blink and you get some items and then hope the team fights go well. And then you're just like, oh, I guess they didn't go well. Oh, no. Oh, I guess the enemy carry has got free farm solo XP and denied half my creeps. Oops. Oh, well. Like, I feel like that's just how people play. So, I mean, obviously I'm a hater. I know he can be good. If you have coordination, your 4 position is like you can actually play lanes pretty well and dominate lanes and get kills and stuff. And if your 4 position's aggressive and knows how to play and, all that kind of stuff. But I just don't, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen outside of like below Immortal, honestly. It just doesn't. I've almost never seen this hero do well. And like, it's very rare. I've seen it actually do better from like a mid lane occasionally here and there. But even that, it's just like, I don't know. I just don't see this hero doing well. I think it's a way to not play Dota. That's my opinion on Darkseer overall. Every time this hero is good, I will say the same thing, and I will repeat that over and over again. Hey, if you love Darkseer and you want to play it, just don't let me discourage you. But I think it's kind of like a crutch in some ways. But yeah, I mean, it can be good. Obviously, Naga's good, so this hero can be good against that. I mean, it can honestly destroy games, especially with Doom being good. You have the vacuum, you have the Doom AoE. Like, there are a lot of combos that can make this hero broken. Don't get me wrong. So that it's not like it has no impact, but it's just especially in the beginning of the game, the way it gives the enemy carry free farm. I don't love it, but it is pretty good. Win rate bears that out. Enigma has been nerfed a little bit, obviously, with Wraith Pact and all that kind of stuff. Same thing with Broodmother over here. You know, they were like broken, but now they're nerfed a little bit. They're not as good, but they're still good. I think Wraith Pact was just broken, and these heroes that could buy it were just even better. And now you're not buying Wraith Pact on Enigma, but it doesn't matter. You're still Enigma. You still have a good laning stage. You're still denying creeps. You're still getting a lot of farm. You still have insane black holes later in the game, refreshers, and all these things that you can just like. People can't deal with it. And you will always, like, it's similar to Magnus or something, you know, if you're able to get to that late game portion where you have this insane ultimate and you get like, you know, you get like a 2-man black hole on the carry and one other hero, or, you know, unless they have some kind of crazy save, unless they have an OD, unless they have something that they can save people with, you can just flat out win the game by yourself late game and you can never be counted out. And that's just Enigma. And then Broodmother, that's the thing. In the last patch, they didn't nerf they didn't nerf a lot of things. They nerfed Wraith Pact, like I've said many times, but they didn't really nerf Bloodstone that much. Leshrac is still pretty good. Broodmother still pretty relevant. Like, this hero was nerfed, but not that much. Like, it wasn't that bad. So if you're still a good, you know, it's not broken. It's not super annoying. I don't see it very much anyway because not many people play Brood. But if you play Brood and you're good with it, I think you can still do pretty well in the offlane. I mean, Pipe is still a good item. People are buying Greaves now. You know, because I think Greaves was buffed, and like, you know, now they don't have Wraith Pact, you have these other heal items and stuff like that. So this hero can still be good, I think, if you're a good Broodmother player, but still a cheese pick as usual. So that's A tier. Next, we're going to go to B tier. Centaur is on the rise. This hero is becoming better and better. I've seen games where this hero has like 6-7k HP with his like shard and stuff like that. He's just so tanky, hard to deal with, does a good amount of damage. He still has weaknesses where his stun is super telegraphed. He can have trouble in lane sometimes against certain heroes, and there are weaknesses that he still has. But overall, I think this hero's good. I think the Ags is a meme, obviously. It's kind of funny that that's there. I think they're going to definitely change something about it. It's just weird that that's even in the game, to be honest, and considering. I like Centaur. I like heroes that are like tanky, these like traditional tanky stun offlaners. Like, I'm not a huge fan of like the Death Prophets and the Razors and like all this weird stuff. I mean, the big ultimates, those are kind of cool, but like, I don't love the, you know, the zoo. No one really loves that. I think people like the centaurs, the axes, the, you know, this kind of tanky stuff. I like that tanky initiation, the tides. This is more fun, not just for offlaners, but it's like traditional. And I think having that get buffed and come back into the meta, having Centaur come back into the meta is a good thing, because this hero hasn't been relevant for a long time. Undying was kind of broken at one point a few months ago. I think it's come down obviously since then, but it's still viable. It's not as good as it once was, but it's still pretty good. You know, it does Wraith Pact again, nerf. This hero bought that a lot. But I mean, hey, you still have Tombstone. You still have the way Decay works. They didn't like change that and like revert that or anything. Decay is still broken. You know, your ult is still really good. You're tanky. You can slow people like crazy. So it's still pretty good. It's just that from the off lane, it sometimes feels like you have no impact. If you have a bad lane, if you don't dominate the lane, if you don't play with a good support, it can feel pretty bad, and you can feel like, you know, you don't really have any impact. If you can be like a real core and have a lot of items, you can still have tons of impact, but it's almost just better as a support, so that's why it's here. Bat Rider, probably better as a mid. You can still play this hero off lane, so it's whenever this hero's good, I think this hero as an offlaner is always going to be like 1 or 2 spots below how it is mid. It just seems like for now it's become more of a mid with the changes that have been made. And so, you know, it's an S tier-ish cheese hero now, A tier cheese hero. It's going to be like a B, or C hero. You know, it's going to be like a B or C hero off lane because it's just not as good. You need your levels, and I feel like there's more carries that can deal, like Slark and all these other things now that are popular that can deal with your sticky napalm, so that's why it's not as good. Viper, an okay hero. I think it's similar to like Razor, but just not as OP with the Bloodstone and all that other kind of stuff that you're buying. Maybe the Ags now. But it's like B tier in the mid lane too. I mean, yes, you can really dominate off lanes, but I think at one point this hero was like a dominating off lane hero, kind of almost in the A or S tier, like maybe a year ago, 6 months ago, whenever. But since then, I mean, with all these ranged carries now, like, it just, as an offlaner, you have a lot harder time walking up and hitting them where, you know, they can just retreat under the tower and just, you know, you can actually put yourself out of position sometimes now against these heroes, and you can actually, you're not actually that tanky early on, so you can just be punished a lot. And then if you don't dominate your lane, what do you really do? Because later in the game, you're not farming, you're not running around ganking people, you're not a traditional offlaner. It can feel very awkward. Dawnbreaker, I just put like Dawnbreaker and Marcy kind of in the same vein, where they just both have been like nerfed a little bit. Like, their stock was super high, they were super broken, and then just every patch it seems like little things about the heroes are nerfed. You know, the ranges on the spells, the damage numbers on their spells, you know, just a little stuff here and there to kind of get them out of the meta. And I think they finally have been reduced down to just mediocre good. They're not broken, they're still pickable, but they're not as good as they once were. Even though they do all the same stuff, it's just their laning stage is a little bit worse, or they don't have as much range on their abilities, or they don't do as much damage, just little stuff like this. And so that's making them still viable, still pickable, but just not as good. I would say Dawnbreaker is more of a core, Marcy more of a support. They can kind of still play both roles, but they're all a little bit worse at all of it. Tusk, a pretty good hero right now. I actually put him in the B tier. I was debating putting him like in the A tier of offlane, but I think he's just better as a 4, to be honest. I think he's good as a mid and an offlane hero. I just like him as a 4 because the thing is, I can see this hero like not doing very well. Sometimes it feels like this hero's broken. You have a ton of items, you're crushing the lane, you're crushing later in the game, you're just like deleting people with your walrus punch, all that kind of stuff. Then you have your Ags with the kick that just puts people out of position. This can be very good. But then other games, it can just feel like the hero's useless, to be honest, as a core. And so I'd almost rather him be a 4 position and do some of the same stuff, but just maybe you're not deleting people with your like Deso and stuff, but whatever. I mean, I think that's why it's here. I like the hero, I do, and so I potentially would put it A. I just don't think the statistics necessarily bear that out, and so I'm comfortable with it being here at B. But yeah, I mean, the kick is very good. The hero does all the Tusk things. I like it as a hero. I like the design. It feels pretty cool. Brewmaster, just okay. It was broken at one point when they did like the refresher Ags build, and you had like 50 ultimates. Now with the new Ags and stuff, that is still pretty good, but it's not as good as it once was. It's just kind of middle of the road. You still suffer from the same problems that Brewmaster always has, where later in the game, if especially now that you don't have a million ults, if you pop your ult and they can just melt your dudes, your Brewlings, which is totally possible. A lot of these like Clinks and a lot of these heroes can just like melt your Brewlings. It can feel really bad. But otherwise, with the little companion dude, it's pretty good. It's just kind of, it's still middle of the road. I think this hero has potential to be like A or S tier if they buff the companion a little bit. There's some things about it that make it a little bit wonky and hard to use. Or like if it dies, it's just like awkward. Stuff like that. Pudge, probably the best as a carry. Then offlane next is the next best, and then mid is probably the worst, and then it's just not a support, I feel like, anymore. The way this hero is played now, you kind of just want it to be an offlane. You can still play it as like a 4 position, but I think it's a little bit better as an offlaner. It's pretty good as an offlaner if you can have a good lane, and you can kind of like scale with items, but it just has bad lane matchups, basically. It's like, you don't want to play Pudge into Slark. Like, Slark is really popular. You don't really want to play this hero into Ursa necessarily in the lane. Like, there are lanes you can win against those two heroes, or if the enemy's bad, but not really. Like, you're going to have a very hard time winning those lanes unless your 4 position is great and their 5 position sucks, and they just don't know what they're doing. Like, you're just going to have a really hard time. And then against ranged heroes too, it's going to be hard for you to walk up in lane, and you're just kind of relying on catching them out with a weird hook. So yeah, it just feels. But if you can survive a lane, you can get a good laning stage, or maybe you can even win a lane. You will have a good time. You can kind of carry late game as Pudge. Primal Beast I put here because as an offlaner just doesn't seem to be as good. It seems to be like Thompson's crushing with it in the mid lane, and that's kind of the big thing that people are talking about these days. But I think as an offlaner, it's just not as good. I'm not a huge Primal Beast player. I don't see much of it, honestly. So I can't really comment to you as to why it is better as a mid too much. Like, I just think it's okay. I think it's okay. I would even potentially put it C tier, but people are having success. The statistics bear it out that it's up here, and I'm okay with it being up here. I just don't see very much of it. So I don't see, why it's any better or worse than it seems to be. It just seems like this is Primal Beast. It's done what it always has. Now it has the Ags, which I guess is pretty good. It can pierce BKB, low cooldown, constant brawling. This is all good stuff, but, nothing crazy. Next is Nature's Prophet. I think almost a little bit better as a carry these days, but a pretty good offlaner. It's just that you are a farming carry offlaner. So that can kind of present some problems because, if you don't have any stuns on your team and you're waiting for that 20 talent with the root, it can feel awkward. So it's like a situational pick. You also can steal a lot of farm from people, which can be pretty annoying, but like you can also solo carry games with this hero. That's kind of just nature's prophet. Not as much of a split pusher in the sense of it doesn't spawn greater treants anymore, but it is like a carry. That's the thing. It's like you don't buy Meteor Hammer, do any of this crazy weird split push stuff anymore. You just kind of are a carry. And if you can get away with it, it's very good. Visage, more of an offlaner in general than like a mid or other positions these days. I know people have played it like support or whatever, but it just has been nerfed and just not as good now that Wraith Pack's not as good. But it's still viable. It's semi-viable. I mean, people still have success with it or decent if you are a Visage picker. And so that's why it's in the B tier, just kind of middle of the road. Nothing special to say about it, though. Just not as good as it once was at TI. Next, we have C tier. So here there are a lot of like just traditional, I guess a lot. There's a few traditional, offlaners, and then some of the weird quirky ones that just aren't good. So we have Mars. People still love picking Mars. I think his kit is just always going to be relatively relevant. Like, the arena is always going to be good. If you can catch people with your spear, it's just always going to be good. It's almost like no matter how bad you make it, people are going to want to play the hero. He's fun to play. He's picked a lot. His win rate's just always pretty bad because ever since, they've just keep nerfing him pretty much. And then because of that, he just doesn't have a good win rate. And that's just kind of where the hero's at. And it seems like it's almost like the second Pudge in a way, because Pudge has always been so popular. People pick it all the time, even if it's bad. That just seems like Mars is the same kind of way. Like he's just like the default offlaner now. Even though he's a relatively new hero, it's just this is offlane. Mars is offlane. That's just what the hero is now. He's just like the default. Offers you control, some damage, low cooldowns, just all the stuff you want from an offlaner. And even though his damage numbers aren't as good, his animations maybe aren't as good, or like there's just different stuff about the hero cooldowns, whatever it is, damage, like I said. But still, the kit is what the kit is. And so unless you change the kit, it's just going to be popular. People are going to like playing it, and it's still going to be okay. It's just the win rate's going to suffer because it's not as OP as it once was. Axe here, it just feels like there's something wrong with Axe. No matter how much they buff, like we have Legion Commander up here, Blade Mail Buyer. Blade Mail was buffed. Axe has been buffed a ton. Like the Shard is pretty good. Like all these things. The only time Axe was relevant was like a year and a half ago when the Manta build was a thing. And ever since then, that's like the only time Axe has been relevant in the past like 5 years. And no matter how much they buff this hero with like the battle hunger changes and all that stuff, it just doesn't seem to be getting played. It doesn't seem to be becoming relevant. And I kind of feel bad for it because I like Axe. It's a fun hero. It's pretty good in some ways, I would say. It's just, I think the problem is you can have bad laning stages. It just needs some way to like survive the lane other than just like buying, like cutting the creep wave. Like that's the thing. You can like cut and stuff, but it just always feels bad when that's what you have to do, to just like cut. You're one of these like tanky blink initiation guys with like a bad lane. Like you would just rather be Legion. You would just rather be another hero, like even Centaur, But if you can survive lane, if you can have a good lane, if you can get to these times, if you can get Blink Blade Mail, I think this hero can be broken actually and be really good. And I think in lower MMRs, I think the lower the MMR you are, the more Axe is relevant. I actually like picking Axe. I think it's pretty good. I just think other heroes do what it does better. And it has some big weaknesses. Underlord, it's kind of on the uprise. I actually like Underlord more than what the statistics say, but it is awkward. You have to play around the ult, which if you're at the lower the MMR you are and the less coordinated your team is, then the worse this hero is in some ways, because if people don't coordinate around the ult, then you just don't have an ult. And so that's like the big weakness, I think. Otherwise, this hero is pretty good. I mean, offers a lot of control, good against like Naga and stuff like that. Has decent lanes, can lose some lanes, but usually has a decent lane, can farm pretty quickly, buys Greaves and Pipe and stuff like this, which is pretty popular now. Also has more of like damage and control builds as well if you want to go those. I think the big thing is I see potential for this hero in high MMRs, in pro games, to be broken. And I think people haven't discovered how good this hero is with its ultimate and stuff. I just don't think they've experimented with it enough. But I think even if that happens, it's not going to ever really be super relevant in low MMRs because of just the way the ultimate works. Like I think when this hero becomes good, it's going to be because of the ultimate and people figure it out. And then even when that happens, it's not going to be good in low MMRs because you're never going to get teams to coordinate around the ultimate. It's just how it is. I mean, I've actually played it a couple times and people have coordinated and it's really good when that happens, but you can't expect that in pubs. It's just straight up, that's just how it is. Spirit Breaker, nothing special about the hero. Just not good, not relevant compared to a lot of the other heroes. I think he just has hard lane matchups. Like, unless you have a good 4 position that you can charge in with and stuff, I think this hero's just better as a 4. Like, yes, if you get items, you can be really good, but I think, it almost feels like this hero's a waste as a 3 because sometimes you'll just get kicked out of lane. You just don't really do much in lane. And then unless you have a good matchup, like I said. And then honestly, you want to be like charging mid and stuff like that half the time anyway. So that's why I think why this hero doesn't love being an offlaner. Although you can farm, like obviously with your charge and stuff and the bash and everything, like you can clear waves, but still, I mean, you could do that as a support too. So anyway, Night Stalker, pretty good, I would say, but statistics kind of say he's not great right now. I think he has matchup problems with a lot of different heroes. I think he can get punished in his first 5 minutes a lot because you're not seeing a lot of like weak laning carries these days. A lot of them are good ranged carries, strong carries that can like dominate lanes and just want to click you like Ursa and Slark and stuff like this. And so if you just like have no game for the first 5 minutes, like that's just so hard to come back from. And then by the time, 5-6 minutes rolls around, if you have a Naga, he's just pushing the lane out and going jungle. Like he doesn't care. And so that can I think that's the real reason that this hero is having trouble. But in lower MMRs, I think this hero can dominate. You just jump on supports, you blow people up. It can be very good. I think the lower MMR you go, the better Night Stalker is, to be honest. Bloodseeker, just at an odd spot. Not really an offlaner, to be honest. More of a carry, I would say. So I'm not going to say too much about him because he's just okay. He's just weird. But he's just more of a carry, I think. That's why he's down here. But you can still pick him, but I don't know. These matchups aren't great either. I wouldn't love to like lane Bloodseeker into a lot of these ranged carries. Kunkka, kind of more of a mid. Feels really awkward. I don't know. I don't really know what to say. I don't see him offlane very much. I just kind of include him in this list because he hasn't played offlane in the past, but he's just kind of irrelevant right now as an offlaner. Necro, I think he just has a lot of bad matchups. It's kind of the same thing I said as for Necro mid. If you have a good game, like you have good matchups, you're not going to get killed through your Ghost Shroud, and you can dominate your lane. You can have you can win games with this hero. And the lower MMR you go, I think the better you are. But I just think right now this hero has a lot of problems. Just a lot of problems with matchups. Venomancer, I just hate this hero. I think this hero's bad. This hero's terrible, like overall. I don't see this hero ever doing well. I just never see it winning games. There's so many dispels available. There's so many ways to deal with its damage. I will say the new shard or whatever, where you like stun people when they pop BKB and stuff like that. That is pretty cool. Don't get me wrong. That's kind of cool. I think it's a little bit underestimated, but still, I don't see this hero being good. You're like feeding people money with your wards. You want to level all your spells, but you can't. It's rare that you're going to dominate lanes. I don't know. I hate this hero, to be honest. Vengeful Spirit, not an offlane. I mean, I know you want to get your ags and stuff, but it's more of a support. I mean, I guess you could play it offlane, but it's just not good. I just much rather have this hero as a support because you have this offlaner and then you have all this money on this offlaner and you have an ags and all this stuff and then you're just kind of like swapping in and dying. It just doesn't feel great when that's kind of the role that the hero's playing. And then D tier here, these are all like kind of some classic offlaners, but they're just really bad right now. Timbersaul's been nerfed like up to oblivion. I will say in lower MMRs, if you know how to play this hero and you can get a good lane, you can do you can actually like still like stomp games and do a lot of damage with like ags and stuff. But I think it has super bad matchups. The way you have to get like 1 billion stacks on reactive armor now to actually even be tanky is super annoying. Like it's really hard to do. And with these ranged heroes and stuff and all the stuff you're dealing with now, I think this hero's bad. Sand King surprisingly is down here. I would probably say Sand King is better, or I would think the Sand King is better than the statistics say, but the statistics say this hero is absolutely awful for some reason. Don't really know what the problem with it is. I thought it was actually kind of on the upswing, but apparently it has like a terrible win rate, just absolutely awful win rate. It's definitely just a matchup thing. I would expect it to be decent against like Naga and stuff, but apparently it's just like terrible. I didn't think it got nerfed or anything like that. Maybe someone could inform me why they think Sand King is like so bad recently. Because personally, I would say it's a little bit better, but then I go and look up the stats. I'm like, wow, this is like really bad. Yeah, Sand King, nothing special. I think it's just not good compared to a lot of these other heroes, like I said, with matchups. Slardar, I think another matchup problem. I think this is a lot of these heroes down here, if you can win your lane, like you can do well. Like I was saying with Night Stalker and stuff, but like Axe, these kinds of things. But honestly, Slardar, you just like don't win your lane, dude. Like you can't run down these like you have a Drow. Like if you get on top of the Drow, sure, you can do well. But the Drow has a silence potentially to push you back. The Drow is going to be ranged, like hitting you with a slow, like I just don't know that you're going to ever really be able to harass people, and then people can harass you out of lane very, very well as well. So I just think this hero has a lot of bad matchups. And then Tidehunter was pretty good like last patch, and had good like buying Wraith Pact and had a lot of impact. And now ever since that patch, I think the fact that Wraith Pact is not an item anymore and some of the other things that happened with the meta, this hero just like fell off a cliff. I think its win rate has always been kind of bad in pubs. Like it's more of a pro, like high MMR hero. But then after the recent patch with the Wraith Pact nerf and everything, it just literally, like I said, fell off a cliff and it's not good anymore. I just would not pick this hero that much. It was pretty OP and pretty good last patch. Like I won a lot of games in a row with it, but not anymore. Like it just doesn't feel good anymore. And then finally we have F tier. So these are a lot of heroes that are either completely terrible or not offlaners anymore. So Chaos Knight has just fallen off a cliff. Not good, not an offlaner, literally abysmal as an offlaner anymore. DK completely nerfed into oblivion, just terrible now. Bristleback has been more of a carry recently, so not an offlaner, and just, again, nerfed into oblivion. Phoenix is more of a support, not an offlaner. Just feels terrible if you try to play this hero offlane. I mean, if you can get out of the lane and like actually get items, sure, but like no. And then not an offlane, so it honestly should just be deleted. I'm just deleting this from the list. It's not an offlane, dude. Stop picking it if you ever did. I mean, you probably don't anyway, because like it was only a fad for like 2 seconds. Not really an offlaner. I mean, you could still play this hero offlane, so I'm gonna keep it on the list, but it's just bad. Don't pick it as an offlaner. More of a mid. If you want to play OD, play mid. And then Huskar, really bad as an offlaner. It's more of a mid. It's kind of only a mid right now. And so it's just not an offlane hero. It just doesn't, like, it just has really bad matchups against like, it's not like you're dominating the lane. Like, I understand if it was like Viper, OD, Huskar, you can dominate the lane, but that's just not the case, because you're going against other ranged heroes. You're going against heroes that can dispel your shit, or, just hit you full to zero, like an Ursa can just run at you and just hit you a bunch in the beginning of the game, doesn't care about your spears, that kind of stuff. It's like, you're just not going to dominate lanes like you once did with Huskar. So that's F tier, and that is the tier list for Offlane for patch 7.32d. As always, guys, if you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. Let me know below what you think, if heroes should be higher, or what you think about the meta in general. And if you like these videos and want to see more, consider supporting me on Patreon. I also offer coaching there as well. So as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.